Nora Pierce had spent the entire afternoon in her kitchen, steady hands smoothing frosting over a neat, 2-layer vanilla cake she'd baked for her husband, Jared. It wasn't extravagant. Money had been tight since Jared's job cut his hours. But Nora loved crafting things by hand, stitching memories into moments. Alongside the cake sat a wooden keepsake box she'd carved herself, its lid engraved with a small brass key inset on top. The key had belonged to Jared's late father, and Nora had built the box as a quiet tribute to the man who'd taught Jared everything about hard work. Jared appreciated meaning more than spectacle, which is why Nora didn't flinch when his sister, Brittney Halston, texted the family insisting on a dinner reservation downtown for his birthday. Brittney was the type who measured affection by price tags, not intention. She earned well, dressed loudly, and walked into rooms as though applause followed her. Nora, by contrast, preferred calm corners and modest gestures. When they arrived at Copperbrook Grill, the host guided them to a long table polished to a shine. Nora set the cake and the wooden box beside her seat with care. The room hummed with conversation, but Brittney's entrance nearly froze the table. She breezed in carrying an oversized designer tote and a glossy black bag tied with gold ribbon. Her heels clicked sharply as she took her seat, with the sort of flourish that begged for admiration. "Hope everyone's hungry," Brittney announced. "I ordered a champagne tower for the table. It'll be here any minute." Nora caught Jared's uneasy glance. A champagne tower wasn't just unnecessary, it was a pointed contrast. Brittney knew they couldn't afford extravagance at the moment. The servers brought starters, and conversation drifted politely until Brittney's gaze fell on Nora's neatly wrapped wooden box. "What's that?" she asked, her tone sugary sweet with an edge sharpened for an audience. "A gift I made for Jared," Nora replied, steadying herself. Brittney laughed. Not a loud laugh, just enough for the table to hear. "You made it? Oh, that's cute." She reached for her water with a smirk. "I guess thoughtful has to substitute when budgets are tight." Nora's cheeks warmed, but she kept her spine straight. Jared bristled. "Britt, knock it off." "I'm just saying," Brittney continued, now turning to their mother Marlene. "Birthdays come once a year. Some people go all out. Others," she gestured vaguely at Nora's gift, "well, they do what they can." Marlene didn't step in. She rarely did when Brittney stirred things. The server arrived with Brittney's champagne tower, stacking glass over glass until the top one was filled and the champagne cascaded down. A spectacle indeed. The neighboring tables glanced over. Nora shifted uncomfortably, until something caught her eye near the bar. A man in a staff vest was adjusting one of the restaurant's CCTV cameras. It angled directly toward their table. Nora thought nothing of it then, just noted the detail the way one does when trying not to focus on humiliation. The meal continued, though Brittney seemed committed to little jabs. "Is that store-bought frosting? Did you carve that box with a kit or something?" "Oh, Jared, don't worry, we got you a real gift too." Jared's jaw tightened each time. Nora squeezed his hand under the table, silently reminding him she didn't want the evening to devolve into a fight. When dessert arrived, Nora's cake, Brittney leaned back theatrically. "Oh wow, homemade cake at a restaurant. Bold choice." The table fell quiet. A few relatives exchanged glances. Jared finally exhaled sharply. "This is enough, Brittney." Nora worked hard. "Show some respect." Brittney laughed again, taking a sip from her champagne flute. "Relax. It's jokes. Honestly, some people are so sensitive." But her expression flickered, just briefly, toward irritation. As though Nora's calm had denied her the reaction she'd been fishing for. The manager approached, an apologetic look on his face. "Ma'am," he said quietly to Brittney, "may I have a word? It's about something involving the bar area." Brittney blinked. "Me? Why?" "I'd rather explain privately." She followed him toward the back hallway, heels striking the floor in clipped beats. While she was gone, Jared whispered, "I'm sorry, honey." Nora shook her head. "Not your fault." But something about the manager's tone had unsettled the table. Even Marlene looked uneasy now. Minutes passed. Then Brittney returned, pale, rattled, and seething. She sank into her chair without her earlier swagger. "What happened?" Marlene asked. "Nothing," Brittney snapped. "They're mistaken." But the manager followed her back. "I'm sorry, ma'am. but we will need to review the footage again. It appears you placed something into another patron's coat pocket while waiting at the bar. They've filed a complaint. The table froze. Nora's breath caught. That's ridiculous. Brittney barked. I didn't put anything anywhere. Just sort this out later. The manager nodded but didn't look convinced. We're verifying the timestamps now. The word timestamp struck Nora. A twist of unease curled in her stomach. Jared frowned. Britt, what's going on? Nothing, she insisted. It's a mix-up. But there was something else, a quick defensive movement on her wrist. She tugged her sleeve down. And for a moment Nora thought she saw the glint of a bracelet she hadn't noticed earlier. The same bracelet Brittney had accused a cousin's daughter of misplacing last month at a family barbecue. A bracelet that had gone missing. Nora looked slowly toward the CCTV camera aimed at their table. She didn't know it yet, but the night's humiliation was about to tilt in a very different direction. The hum of Copperbrook Grill dulled into a low, uneasy murmur around their table. Conversations from nearby diners continued, but at Jared's birthday dinner, every fork hovered midair and every breath seemed caught, waiting. Brittney's shoulder blades were locked in place, chin lifted too sharply, telegraphing the posture of someone trying to hold control with slippery fingers. Nora watched her carefully. Not with triumph, she felt none, but with a cautious, tightening curiosity. Something was undeniably brewing beneath Brittney's polished exterior. And something about the word timestamps refused to leave Nora's mind, like a thread that needed tugging. The manager returned, carrying a small leather folder, and accompanied by a young security employee holding a slim tablet. Miss Halston, the manager said softly, we're verifying the recordings, but we also found this. The security employee handed him a laminated sheet, something Nora hadn't known restaurants kept. The manager placed it gently on the edge of the table. A coatroom itemization log. Every checked coat. Every reported discrepancy. Every staff note. And on the bottom of the current evening's list, freshly written in neat capital letters. Pink women's bracelet, found in customer coat pocket. Staff initials or time. 7:42 p.m. The table went completely still. Brittney's face drained. That's not mine, she said immediately, too immediately. Nora's eyes drifted to Brittney's wrist again, to the thin gold bracelet now tucked just slightly under her sleeve. The same shape, the same slender links she remembered from that summer afternoon when Brittney had thrown a dramatic fit, claiming her cousin's daughter had sticky fingers. Nora had kept silent then. But tonight? The pieces were aligning almost without effort. The manager cleared his throat. Miss Halston, as we explained, the patron whose coat was affected wishes to remain anonymous for the moment. They reported feeling something unfamiliar in their pocket after returning from the bar. We located the item and, as standard procedure, are cross-referencing it with CCTV footage. That's ridiculous. Brittney snapped. People misplace things all the time. I had nothing to do with it. The security employee looked at the tablet. Ma'am, respectfully, in the bar footage, you do appear to reach toward the coat rack area. We're reviewing the angle, but it's very clear you handled something that wasn't yours. Nora swallowed. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Brittney was in trouble. Far deeper trouble than she was willing to admit. Jared leaned forward. Britt, what did you do? I didn't do anything, she practically shouted. This is absurd. Marlene, usually composed to the point of passivity, finally broke. Brittney, why would your name even be connected to something like this? Brittney threw her hands up. Because they're incompetent. Because someone's lying. I was getting a napkin from the bar, that's all. Nora exhaled slowly. Her fingers trailed lightly along the wooden keepsake box she'd carved for Jared. Tonight had started with humiliation, but now she was witnessing something else. Something like a truth fighting its way through layers of pretense. But the truth hadn't fully arrived yet. The security employee glanced at the manager. Sir, I think you should see this. He turned the tablet slightly, but not toward Brittney. Toward Nora. Ma'am, he said, addressing Nora carefully. While we were reviewing the courtroom footage, we noticed something else. Is this yours? He tapped the screen and a paused frame came into view. Nora leaned closer. Her breath caught. There was her chipped mug, the old white one she brought in a tote bag containing Jared's cake supplies. She always carried it while baking as a sort of ritual, a familiarity that calmed her. The mug had belonged to Jared's father once. The rim had a small chip from years ago. She'd wrapped it in a kitchen towel and tucked it into her bag for luck. But there it was, unwrapped, exposed in the footage, sitting on the bar counter, next to Brittney. Nora blinked, confused. That shouldn't be there. I never took it out of the bag. Jared frowned. Wait, why would your mug be near Britt? The security employee zoomed the footage slightly. The timestamp glowed on the screen. 7:41 p.m. Just 1 minute before the bracelet had been discovered in the coat pocket. There was Brittney leaning on the bar, her hand casually sliding the chipped mug down the counter, as though setting something aside. Except Nora had never taken it out. Nora felt something tighten in her chest. Why would she touch my mug? The manager flipped open the leather folder. There's more. A server reported seeing Miss Halston carrying a ceramic cup earlier, though at the time, he thought it belonged to the restaurant. Brittney huffed loudly. Oh my God. Are we seriously accusing me of stealing some ugly old mug now? This is insane. The table inhaled sharply. Even Marlene closed her eyes for a long, pained moment. Nora's fingers curled around her napkin. She wasn't angry. Not the way she'd been moments ago when Brittney mocked her gift. This emotion was different. It was bewildered disappointment. Why target her? Why use her belongings? What was Brittney trying to set up? The manager cleared his throat. We're not making accusations, Miss Halston. We're reviewing inconsistencies. And unfortunately, these inconsistencies now involve 2 separate personal items. Before Brittney could fire back, the security employee hesitated, then added, Ma'am, there's another complication. The patron who filed the complaint? They're not simply upset. He took a breath. They're asking that we call the police. The atmosphere at the table collapsed into complete stillness. Even the background clinking of cutlery seemed to recede. Marlene gasped. Police? For heaven's sake, why? The security employee explained carefully. Because they believe they were deliberately targeted. They claim an item of theirs went missing earlier this evening. And with the bracelet found in their coat pocket, well, he exhaled. It raises concerns. Nora's mind raced. A missing item. A planted bracelet. A chipped mug moved without her knowledge. And Brittney, suddenly defensive, irritable, insisting that everything was a misunderstanding. Jared rubbed his forehead. Brittney, I'm begging you. Tell us what's going on. Brittney's chair screeched as she pushed back. I'm not staying here for this. I'm calling my lawyer. She stood abruptly. But as she did, the sleeve of her blouse shifted. Enough that the bracelet on her wrist glinted again before she yanked it down. The same bracelet that was supposedly missing for a month. The same bracelet she had accused a teenager of misplacing. The manager gently stepped between Brittney and the walkway. Not blocking her, just creating a boundary. Miss Halston, he said, you're free to leave. But if you do, and the police arrive, it will be noted. Brittney froze. And then, for the first time that evening, her bravado cracked. Not fully, just a splinter. Enough for Nora to see panic behind the mascara. She sat back down stiffly. Jared whispered across the table, voice trembling. Britt, what were you planning tonight? And Brittney's reply came through clenched teeth. I didn't plan anything. But Nora heard the waver. The crack. The tremor. A server approached cautiously, holding a small object. Excuse me. I believe this fell from under one of your seats. He placed it gently on the table. A small folded piece of paper. Nora opened it before anyone else could. On the paper, written in Brittney's handwriting, recognizable from birthday cards and earlier notes, was a sentence that made Nora's stomach drop. When it falls out of her bag, act surprised. Every eye lifted slowly toward Brittney. Every ounce of color faded from her face. The manager inhaled sharply. Miss Halston, I think we need to review this as well. Brittney's hand shook as she tried to snatch the paper back, but Jared caught her wrist, firm but steady. Were you trying to frame Nora? He whispered, horror creeping through his voice. Nora looked at the chipped mug in the footage, the bracelet in the coat room, the planted note, the way Brittney had mocked her gift, nudged her, pushed her emotionally until her cheeks burned. This wasn't random. This wasn't spite. This was intentional. And it wasn't finished unraveling yet. The restaurant seemed to shrink around Nora, as though the walls leaned in to listen. Brittney's face had gone from brazen red to an uneasy gray, her hand frozen in Jared's grip. The note lay on the table between them like a detonated truth, plain, flimsy, and impossible to ignore. But the evening wasn't done tightening its grip. The manager lifted the slip of paper gently, as though afraid the tension in the room might shatter it. "We'll log this with our incident report," he said, turning to the security employee. "Check for corresponding footage of this exchange as well." Brittney tried to sneer, but the expression faltered halfway. "You're all reading too much into something that isn't." A new voice interrupted. "Excuse me," said the host from the front podium, standing a few feet away with cautious hesitation. "Sir, I believe you wanted this earlier? Someone left it at the stand by mistake." He held out a crumpled restaurant receipt. The manager frowned. "A receipt?" "Yes," the host replied. "It was printed for a payment made before the party arrived. I assumed it belonged to one of your guests." Before anyone could object, the host gently placed the slip in the manager's hand. He unfolded it, and his eyebrows lifted. "This is interesting," he murmured. The table leaned in collectively, though every person knew instinctively that this new reveal had Brittney written all over it. The manager cleared his throat. "Receipt number 6832, pre-event bar tab. Paid by Brittney Halston. Timestamp, 6:58 p.m. Items: champagne split 2. Rail whiskey 1. Courtesy item fee staff incentive $40. Total, $78.13. Jared blinked. "Britt, you bought drinks almost an hour before dinner?" Brittney's voice was a brittle scoff. "So what? I wanted a drink before everyone got here. Is that a crime?" Marlene's tone was sharp for the first time in recent memory. "And what exactly is a staff incentive fee?" The manager exhaled. "It's essentially a tip. A very large one. Usually used when a guest wants special attention or a particular request fulfilled." Nora felt the hair on her arms lift. Special attention. A request. Before they even arrived. Jared's jaw tightened. "What request, Brittney?" "I didn't make one." Brittney snapped. "Maybe the server added it themselves." The security employee shook his head. "We checked the server logs earlier when confirming staff movements. The bartender assigned to the bar at 6:58 is very new and extremely by the book. There's no chance he added that fee without instruction." Nora pressed her fingertips to her temple. "So she paid someone before she tried to humiliate me with the gift comments? Before the champagne tower?" The note, when it falls out of her bag, acts surprised, echoed in her mind. Before the mug appeared on the footage. Before the bracelet wound up in someone's coat. The pattern was emerging. Clear. Cold. And calculated. Jared turned to the manager. "Can you clarify what the incentive was for?" The manager hesitated. "Only the bartender can confirm the exact phrasing. He's in the back. Would you like me to bring him out?" Before Jared could answer, Brittney lunged across the table and snatched the receipt from the manager's hand. "No one needs clarification," she snapped. "I left that tip because the bartender was sweet, all right? I felt generous, big deal." But her hand was shaking. The receipt trembled like a leaf in a storm. The manager's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm afraid we still need clarification, Miss Halston." As if summoned by the rising tension, the bartender stepped out from the kitchen hallway, nudged by a server who whispered something urgently in his ear. The young man looked barely 21, crisp uniform, clean apron, and the nervous stiffness of someone new to customer-facing work. He approached cautiously. "Excuse me, are you the party involved in the earlier payment?" Brittney glared. "No." Jared stood. "Yes." The bartender glanced nervously at Brittney, then at the manager. "Sir, I wasn't sure if I should say anything unless you asked directly. But the lady," he pointed reluctantly at Brittney, "asked me if I could do her a favor." Nora felt the air thicken. Jared's voice was dangerously calm. "What favor?" The bartender swallowed. She wanted to know where the coatroom cameras pointed. She asked if there were any blind spots. And then she said, his face reddened. "She said if I made sure a certain moment didn't get interrupted, There'd be another $40 in it for me at the end of the night. The table went silent. The entire restaurant felt silent. Even Brittney's breath seemed to halt mid-exhale. Nora's throat tightened. Interrupted? What moment? The bartender rubbed his palms together anxiously. I don't know. She just said she needed about 30 seconds near the coat rack without anyone coming by. I thought she was planning some sort of surprise. Marlene gasped softly. Jared sat down slowly, eyes never leaving his sister. Britt, please tell me this isn't what it looks like. Brittney crossed her arms tightly. He's lying. You're lying. All of you are conspiring against me. She was unraveling. The edges of her voice were frayed. The manager spoke gently but firmly. Miss Halston, the CCTV refutes that. The payment log refutes it. And the note found under your chair, written in your handwriting, further connects these pieces. Nora looked down at the table. Her chipped mug, her wooden keepsake box, her cake, her name being quietly threaded into a trap she hadn't known she was walking into. And somehow, Brittney needed all this to fail dramatically tonight. Needed Nora embarrassed, humiliated, maybe even accused. But why? What had built up to this moment? Brittney sank deep into her chair as though gravity had increased. Nora is always pretending to be perfect, she muttered, voice warping with resentment. Always acting wholesome, quiet, sweet. My parents gush over her. Jared defends her no matter what she does. And I'm sick of it. Her voice cracked. Just once, I wanted everyone to see what I see. Nora stared at her, disbelief blooming into something like pity. And then the manager added, almost reluctantly, there's something else, Miss Halston. The patron whose coat was tampered with? They're still waiting. Waiting. Jared repeated. For the police, the manager confirmed. Brittney's eyes widened. No, they can't. This isn't, they don't need to involve. But before she could finish, the security employee stepped closer to the table, tablet in hand. Sir, he told the manager. The patron agreed to identify themselves. The manager nodded, and the security employee turned toward the table. The person who filed the complaint, he said carefully, is asking to speak with the family. Jared stiffened. Who is it? The security guard hesitated. They said you'll understand once you see them. Nora's pulse thudded. If someone Brittney had wronged earlier tonight was coming forward, then the night's carefully built storyline was about to flip completely. The restaurant manager gestured toward a side hallway, the one leading toward the restrooms and the coat room aisle where all of this had begun unraveling. Every member of Jared's birthday dinner party stared toward that corridor, breath held, cutlery untouched. Even servers slowed without meaning to, sensing the gravity coiling around their table. Nora felt Jared's hand slip into hers under the table, a reflexive reach, grounding, almost pleading. He didn't know what was coming. None of them did. But Brittney's eyes, wide, unfocused, flicking nervously between the hallway and the exit, told Nora that she knew exactly who was about to appear. And that terrified her. The security employee stepped back respectfully as a figure appeared in the hallway's dim light. A woman, mid-40s, dark business suit, hair neatly pinned, stern posture, a purse tucked tightly under one arm. Her heels clicked softly as she stepped forward. Nora recognized her first, and her heart dropped. Camille Denton. Jared recognized her second. His breath hitched. Marlene gasped. Brittney closed her eyes. Even the manager seemed surprised. Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for waiting. If you're comfortable, please. Camille nodded, jaw clenched. Camille Denton had been Jared's manager at Richfield Manufacturing until 6 months ago, before the company downsized and cut several positions, including Jared's. She had always been fair, strict but respectful, and Jared had spoken well of her even after his job was eliminated. But there was more. A deeper history. Camille had been Jared's father's closest friend in the firm. She'd worked with him for over 20 years. After his passing, she'd attended the funeral, hugged the family, supported Nora and Jared as though they were her own. And, most notably to Nora, she'd kept quiet when family drama swirled at the service. Drama started, not by Nora, not by grief, but by Brittney. Nora remembered now, clear as glass. At the funeral, Brittney had cornered Camille by the coat stand with a bitter edge to her voice, accusing her of making Dad work too hard in his later years. Camille hadn't defended herself, not because she was guilty, she wasn't, but because she'd understood it was grief speaking. She'd absorbed the cruelty quietly, refusing to escalate. But Brittney had not forgotten the exchange. And clearly she hadn't forgiven it either. Camille approached the table with professional composure, though the tension in her shoulders betrayed unease. She nodded politely to the manager, then spoke to Jared. "I didn't want this to happen tonight, Jared," she said softly. "I truly didn't. But I couldn't ignore it." Jared swallowed. "Camille, what happened?" Camille exhaled. "When I came in earlier, I hung my coat in the coat room while waiting for a colleague. When I left the bar, I felt something inside the pocket. I pulled it out and it was a bracelet, something I had never seen before. At first I thought a staff member had made a mistake, so I asked for the manager. But then," she paused, looked at Brittney. "I recognized Miss Halston from your father's funeral." Brittney stiffened. Her jaw clenched so tightly that a muscle twitched near her ear. Camille continued. "And I remembered her face. Her tone. The way she spoke to me that day. When I saw her at the bar earlier, I noticed her watching me closely." She swallowed hard. Then she moved toward the coat room. "I didn't think much of it until the bracelet turned up. And when I reported it, she panicked." The manager nodded. "We're verifying that on video." She did move toward that area at the same timestamp. Brittney slammed her palm on the table. "This is ridiculous. Why would I put some bracelet in your coat? Why would I target you of all people?" Nora watched Camille's expression shift, just barely, toward something heavy. Something that made sense of the bruises forming on the evening. "I didn't think it was personal," Camille said, "until I discovered something else missing." The table leaned in instinctively. "My work ID," she said quietly. "It was clipped to my coat when I arrived. When I tried to leave, it was gone." A ripple of shock passed through the table. The manager froze. "Your ID is missing?" Camille nodded. "I reported it to the staff as soon as I noticed. I can't get into my building without it." Then she looked at Brittney. "It would be very easy for someone to claim I misplaced it." Nora's stomach tightened. The mug, the bracelet, the note, the staff incentive, blind spots, a missing ID. The pattern wasn't just humiliation now, it was escalation. Jared's voice trembled. "Britt, did you try to frame Nora and Camille?" Brittney scoffed. "You're all insane. Why would I frame Camille? She's nobody." Camille's gaze hardened. "Your father meant a great deal to me. I respected him." She paused. "He also left behind something that involved your family." That sentence froze the table. "What are you talking about?" Marlene asked, confusion crossing her face. Camille hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Your father had a small pension account from the company, one he never filed the final paperwork for. After his passing, I oversaw some loose ends. The beneficiary he listed was supposed to be updated, but he never got the chance." She looked at Jared. "He named you, dear." Then at Nora. "And Jared told me at the time that he wanted you both to use it wisely." Nora felt her heart soften. It hadn't been much money, but it had meant everything to Jared emotionally. Camille continued. "But Miss Halston showed up at the office 2 weeks later. She claimed she deserved the payout instead. She argued with HR. Loudly. Aggressively." Jared blinked. "What?" Marlene's eyes widened. "Brittney, you never told us that." Brittney's voice cracked. It was Dad's money. I thought I deserved." Camille shook her head. HR told her repeatedly that beneficiaries aren't decided by siblings. She left yelling that I was siding with Nora, and that I was two-faced. Security had to escort her out. Color drained from Brittney's cheeks. Nora stared at her, stunned. This wasn't just petty jealousy. This was bitterness that had been stewing for months. "Brittney," Marlene whispered, voice trembling. Is that why you came in early tonight? Is that why you paid that incentive?" The bartender swallowed. "She specifically asked me what areas the cameras don't cover. And she told me," Camille added quietly, "that if anything happened tonight, she'd make sure the right person took the blame." Brittney's voice rose into a hysterical pitch. That's a lie. I never. But the manager raised a hand. Miss Halston, the coatroom camera captured you placing something inside the patron's coat. And the note found under your chair indicates you plan to make an object fall out of someone's bag to create surprise, likely implying guilt. Nora closed her eyes. So that's why Brittney touched her tote bag. Why her chipped mug appeared on the footage. She tried to set up a moment where the mug, or something else, would fall from Nora's belongings. A staged incrimination, Jared whispered. You tried to frame Nora for theft. Brittney's teeth clenched. You always protect her. Always. She gets everything. Dad adored her. You adore her. Camille adores her. Everyone does. I'm sick of being the side character in my own family. Brittney, Marlene said sharply, voice trembling with hurt. You are my daughter. You have always been enough. This isn't how you get attention. The security employee stepped forward, voice soft but firm. Ma'am, the police are on their way. Brittney's breath hitched audibly. And that was when her composure truly cracked. No, I didn't mean I wasn't going to. She turned frantically toward Nora. You don't understand. You act so perfect. You make everyone love you. I just wanted to show them you're not some saint. Nora felt a sting behind her eyes. Not of tears but of realization. This wasn't about the gift. Or the cake. Or the dinner. This was about resentment that had grown roots. And erupted tonight. Nora said quietly, I've never tried to compete with you. Brittney shook her head violently. Liar. Camille's expression softened, not toward Brittney, but toward the painful truth unraveling before them. Jealousy makes fools of good people, she said gently. But this went too far. The manager nodded to the security employee. Escort Miss Halston to the office. The officers will meet us there. Jared flinched. Wait. Does she have to? The manager nodded sadly. The report is already filed. The evidence is substantial. And the item Miss Denton lost is a corporate ID. It's considered sensitive access material. Brittney's eyes brimmed with panic. Jared, please don't let them. But Jared's face was ashen. And he didn't move. As the security employee guided Brittney to her feet, Nora watched Brittney's fury collapse into something smaller. Something desperate. Something she had no words for. Because everything she tried to build tonight, every manipulative seed, was now exposed under the bright, inescapable light of truth. The hallway to the manager's office felt impossibly long. Every step swallowed by the thick carpet and heavier silence. Jared walked beside Nora, fingers trembling where they interlaced with hers. Marlene trailed behind with Camille, her breath uneven, as if each revelation of the night had chipped away a little more of her foundation. Up ahead, the security employee guided Brittney, who now moved like a marionette with half-cut strings. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes darted. She no longer swaggered or commanded attention. She shrank from it. The manager unlocked the door to a small administrative office tucked behind the kitchen. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A corkboard hung crookedly above a metal desk. A monitor sat in the corner, already displaying the grid of CCTV feeds. Please, the manager said, gesturing to the chairs. None of them sat. Not even Brittney. The security employee closed the door behind them, then turned to the manager and nodded. Footage is queued. The manager clicked a few keys and the main feed enlarged. Nora felt her pulse thud, steady and heavy like a slow drum. The footage began. Timestamp. 7:38 p.m. coatroom feed. The angle showed the narrow aisle beside the coat racks, just as guests had begun arriving for dinner. Brittney stepped into the frame alone. She studied the layout with the precision of someone surveying a chessboard, checking corners, scanning entry points. Her behavior didn't fit the casual narrative she'd spun at the table. Nora held her breath. Brittney lifted her designer tote, rummaged inside, then pulled out Nora's chipped mug. Wrapped in the kitchen towel Nora had carefully bundled it in. Nora's breath locked. I never took that out of my bag. The manager nodded subtly. We see that now. On screen, Brittney unwrapped the mug, looked around, then slipped it into the side pocket of her jacket. An odd action given how bulky the mug was. Camille exhaled sharply. She meant to plant it. Marlene pressed her hand to her mouth. Timestamp: 7:40 p.m. Coatroom feed. Another figure entered, Camille, wearing her structured black coat. She passed Brittney with a polite nod. Brittney returned a thin smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. Camille hung her coat neatly, clipped ID visible on the lapel. Then she exited the frame. Nora felt Jared tense beside her. He murmured, "Okay. This is where she must have." But the next moment defied expectations. Once Camille was gone, Brittney approached Camille's coat, pulled an object from her tote, and slipped it deliberately into the coat's left pocket. The gold bracelet, thin, familiar, unmistakable. The same bracelet Brittney had claimed her teenage cousin had stolen. The same bracelet she'd worn tonight, hidden beneath her sleeve. Nora felt sick. The pieces weren't falling into place, they were being hammered in. And then, timestamp: 7:41 p.m. Coatroom feed, zoom in. Nora whispered. No, she didn't. But she had. Brittney slipped the chipped mug into the pocket of Nora's own tote bag, which she had placed near the corner while waiting to be seated. She tucked the towel back inside, making it appear as if it had fallen out accidentally. A handwritten note fell from her tote as she stood, fluttering under the chair. The note Nora had found. Nora's stomach twisted. Why? She whispered hoarsely. What could I have possibly done to deserve this? Jared didn't answer, he couldn't. He was staring at the screen as if seeing his sister clearly for the first time in years. Timestamp: 7:42 p.m. bar feed. The screen switched angles. Camille approached the bar to pick up napkins, unaware of anything amiss. Brittney followed a moment later, lingering just behind her. Then the bartender's early account became concrete. Brittney leaned across the bar counter, casually setting down Nora's mug as if it belonged there, creating a breadcrumb for suspicion. Jared whispered. She wanted someone to point out your mug on the bar. She needed people to believe you were rifling through coats or pockets. Nora barely heard him. The footage continued. Timestamp: 7:43 p.m. Coatroom feed. A server walked by with a tray. Brittney pretended to adjust her shoe, shielding herself from the server's view. Then swiftly, deliberately, she unclipped Camille's work ID from the coat lapel and slipped it into her own bag. Nora felt her heart fall clean through her chest. Camille flinched visibly as she watched her own property stolen on screen. The footage ended. Silence dropped like an unexpected weight. The manager folded his arms. The video speaks for itself. Brittney shook her head wildly. No, this isn't fair. This is taken out of context. You don't understand. Jared's voice cut through everything. Soft. Broken. Why, Britt? Why would you do this to Nora? To Camille? To all of us? Brittney swallowed, eyes darting, jaw locking and unlocking. You all think she's perfect. Sweet little Nora who makes crafts and bakes cookies. She's so pure, isn't she? Her bitterness cracked like dry soil. Marlene stepped forward. Brittney, this isn't about Nora being perfect. Brittney rounded on her. You never defend me like that. I defend you, Marlene said gently. But I can't defend this. Brittney's breathing sped up. You don't get it. She glanced around as if searching for an escape route. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't mean to. I just wanted people to stop acting like I'm the villain. Nora said quietly. Brittney, you made me the villain tonight. Her eyes filled. Not with pity, but with mourning for something she had once hoped could be a healthy relationship. Jared pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. Britt, you tried to set my wife up for theft. And you tried to frame Camille for misconduct. That's a crime. Brittney's voice shrank. I thought if something embarrassing happened to Nora, you'd finally realize she isn't. Isn't what? Jared asked. Brittney blinked. Her lips trembled. Isn't perfect. Nora felt the weight of the words, how childish they were, how painful, how revealing. Camille finally spoke, voice firm but not unkind. Miss Halston, jealousy is natural. But tonight wasn't jealousy. It was cruelty. And it could have destroyed someone's reputation. Before Brittney could answer, a sharp knock landed on the office door. The manager inhaled deeply. That will be the officers. Brittney's complexion went chalk white. No, please, I can explain, Jared, I didn't. Her pleas collapsed as the door opened and two uniformed officers stepped inside. Evening, the first officer said calmly. We received a report of suspected theft and attempted framing. We have CCTV footage and a victim statement. We need to speak with. His eyes fell on Brittney. Miss Brittney Halston. Brittney didn't speak. She didn't move. She simply deflated. The officer nodded to the manager. Sir, if you could provide us with the footage and written statements, we'll begin processing. The manager offered the tablet and the printed log. I'm afraid, he added. Miss Halston also attempted to bribe a staff member to create a blind spot during her actions. The officer nodded gravely. We'll add that to the report. Brittney whispered, barely audible. Jared, please. He closed his eyes. I can't protect you from this, he said softly. Not this time. The second officer stepped forward. Miss Halston, you're not under arrest at this time, but we do need to take an official statement. You may come with us voluntarily. Brittney sagged. Nora expected another outburst, or denial, or some final dramatic accusation. But instead, Brittney's voice came out small. I'm sorry. Whether she meant it was unclear. But the damage was done. The officers guided her gently from the office. The door clicked behind them, and the room exhaled as though it had been holding its breath for hours. Jared sank into a chair, head in his hands. I can't believe she did this. I can't believe any of this happened tonight. Nora placed a hand on his back. We'll get through it. Marlene hugged herself, tears forming. My daughter, what happened to her? Camille spoke quietly. This wasn't sudden. Envy rarely is. It grows slowly. Tonight was simply the night it demanded space. The manager cleared his throat respectfully. For what it's worth, Mrs. Pierce, your wife is clearly innocent. The footage exonerates her completely. Jared looked at Nora with a mixture of relief and grief. I know. I just can't believe. She tried to make you look like a criminal. Nora squeezed his shoulder. The truth came out. That's what matters. But inside, part of her was already bracing for the fallout. The conversations, the shame, the pain Brittney's choices would leave behind. And she knew this night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The officers led Brittney to a quiet alcove near the manager's office, close enough for the family to hear muffled voices, far enough that her words weren't fully clear. The manager remained in the office with Nora, Jared, Marlene, and Camille, gathering documents for the police. The security employee hovered near the door, ears perked, as if caught between professional duty and morbid curiosity. Nora stood near the window overlooking the parking lot, arms folded lightly. The night air outside had gone still, thick, waiting, like the world itself was holding a breath. She couldn't shake it. Something was missing. Not the mug. Not the bracelet. Not the planted note or the courtroom act. Something deeper. Something she didn't have the shape of yet. And then she heard it. One phrase clear among the muffled words just beyond the door. I didn't take her money. Nora blinked. Money? Camille stiffened. She met Nora's eyes, then the manager's. Did someone mention money earlier? The manager shook his head. The only report we received was regarding the bracelet and the ID. But something in Camille's face changed, like puzzle pieces clinking into place. Oh no, she whispered. Marlene turned sharply. Camille? What is it? Camille hesitated, not out of doubt, but because of the sensitive weight of the information. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. When your husband passed, she said gently, looking at Jared and Nora. His pension wasn't the only thing left in transition. Jared blinked. What do you mean? Camille inhaled, steadying herself. Your father had a secondary account much smaller, intended for emergency funds. He kept it separate from his main retirement savings. She paused. It was meant for you, Jared. But because he passed unexpectedly, it hadn't fully transferred. Nora's eyebrows pinched. We never heard about that. You wouldn't have, Camille said. He kept it private. The paperwork for release required next of kin confirmation. Marlene frowned. But I never signed anything. Camille nodded softly. Exactly. No next of kin signatures were filed. Silence followed. Then understanding hit Nora like a cold gust. So the account is still pending, she whispered. Still pending, Camille confirmed. And because it was never closed, someone could try to interfere. If they knew it existed. Jared leaned forward. But Brittney didn't know about it. Camille exhaled. Actually, she did. A pin dropped somewhere in Nora's chest. Jared's voice rose an octave. How? Camille looked at the floor. Your father confided in me that Brittney once tried to access his primary pension without him present. She'd brought documents, falsified ones, claiming he'd authorized her. HR flagged it. Nothing came of it. He declined to press further. Marlene gasped aloud. Jared stared blankly. He never told me. He didn't want to damage the relationship, Camille whispered. He was hopeful. But Brittney was furious when HR rejected her. She stormed out of the building. Nora closed her eyes. Of course it went deeper. But Camille wasn't finished. After his funeral, she continued, she came to my office demanding to know if any other accounts existed. She insisted she had a right to know. When we declined, she threatened to force the truth out eventually. Jared's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted to protect you, Camille said. And I hoped she would forget. But Brittney never forgot anything she thought she was owed. Nora's pulse quickened. So, the missing item you reported tonight, was it your ID for building access? Camille hesitated. Not exactly, she said. There was something else clipped to it. Everyone leaned in at once. It wasn't just my ID. It was also a temporary access card for the secure HR archive room. I put it on earlier today while preparing paperwork. Her expression darkened. The same room where your father's unresolved emergency account folder is stored. Jared's blood went cold. Nora whispered. She wanted your access card. Camille nodded. If she had tried to use it, building security logs would have recorded it. They would have traced the swipe back to my ID and suspended my credentials immediately. The security employee swore under his breath. Marlene put a trembling hand over her mouth. My child. Nora felt her heart constrict. Not with pity anymore, but with the awful understanding of scope. This wasn't about humiliating Nora at dinner, or causing a small scandal, or even lashing out in jealousy. This was about gaining access to something much bigger, and using the dinner as cover. Jared's voice cracked. She tried to steal from me again. Nora placed a steady hand on his arm. But Camille wasn't done. There's more, she said carefully. Miss Halston attempted to file a request with HR 2 days ago. She claimed she was acting as your representative. What? Jared blinked. Why would they talk to her without me present? They didn't, Camille said firmly. They rejected the request. But it tipped them off that someone was trying to access confidential material. Nora felt her chest tighten. So tonight she planned all of this to create plausible chaos. Noise. A distraction. Camille nodded. If Nora had been caught with a stolen item, especially from me, the story would have shifted. Brittney could paint herself as the helpful sister who saw something suspicious. Meanwhile, she could slip away with my access card unnoticed. The room fell silent. A silence heavy enough to bend air around it. A silence that tasted like betrayal layered over strategy. Finally, Jared exhaled. All this time. She wanted money Dad never intended for her. Marlene leaned against the desk, grasping for balance. I raised her better than this, she whispered. I thought I did. Before anyone could offer comfort, the office door opened slightly. One officer peeked in. Mr. Pierce? Mrs. Pierce? Miss Denton. His expression was serious but composed. We need to clarify the statement given. Miss Halston admitted to handling your ID and the bracelet, but she claimed she only intended to embarrass Mrs. Pierce, not commit theft. Camille's lips tightened. She took my access card. The officer nodded. We'll be addressing that next. But she also said something else. Something we need you to confirm. He checked his notes. She stated she overheard a conversation at the funeral. Something about a locked file she needed to see. And she believed tonight was her best chance to get it. Nora's breath hitched. The pieces aligned. Jared raised a hand. What locked file? We've never. Camille closed her eyes briefly. Your father wrote a letter. Personal one. He left it with HR to be filed with the emergency account paperwork. It wasn't part of the pension. It wasn't official. It was for you, Jared. Jared swallowed hard. Why didn't we get it? Camille answered softly, HR is required to release personal addendums only after all beneficiary matters are fully resolved. Since the emergency account is pending, the letter is sealed. Nora's breath stilled, and then understanding crashed into her. Brittney wanted the letter, she whispered. Jared blinked. Why would she? But Camille didn't need to guess. She said it plainly. Because that letter names the reasons your father removed Brittney as a beneficiary. The room froze. Absolutely still. Jared's face drained of color. Marlene stifled a sob. Nora felt her chest tighten painfully. The officer cleared his throat softly. Miss Halston claimed she wanted to correct the record before the letter became public. She insists she was protecting her father's legacy. Nora whispered. No. She wanted to destroy the letter. The officer nodded grimly. That's our concern as well. Camille added. If she'd succeeded, if she'd gotten into that archive, she could have taken the letter, the folder, the entire file. It would have looked like a clerical mishap. Jared pressed his palms to his eyes. She tried to erase Dad's words. The officer stepped back toward the doorway. We'll be questioning her further. Please stand by. As he left, the door clicked softly behind him. No one spoke. It was Marlene who finally broke the silence, voice cracking. My daughter didn't just want to embarrass someone, she whispered. She wanted to rewrite the past. Nora put a steadying hand on her shoulder. Because the next steps, the legal consequences, the family fallout, the truth in that sealed letter, were about to reshape all of them. The minutes stretched with an almost physical heaviness, as if the air itself resisted movement. Outside the manager's office, the muted hum of the restaurant felt unreal. Laughter and clinking dishes drifted faintly through the walls, reminders that the world beyond this moment continued without pause. But inside, the Pierce family hovered in the stillness left behind by Brittney's unraveling. Nora stood beside Jared, her hand lightly on his arm. She wasn't sure whether she was comforting him or anchoring herself, or both. Marlene sat in a chair now, back rigid, eyes dazed. She looked 10 years older than she had at the start of dinner. Camille remained standing, posture straight but softened at the edges, as if gravity had begun to fold her shoulders inward after carrying too many secrets for too long. Then came the knock. Firm, controlled, official. The door opened and the two officers stepped back inside. Their expressions were calm, neutral, but tinged with something heavier. Sympathy, perhaps, or the weight of knowing their words would change the immediate landscape of this family's life. The taller officer closed the door quietly. Mr. Pierce, Mrs. Pierce, Miss Denton, he began, nodding to each of them. We've taken Miss Halston's initial statement and reviewed the footage with her present. Jared tensed. Nora felt him brace, as though expecting the room to shift beneath him. The officer continued. Miss Halston has admitted to moving items that did not belong to her. She denies intending to commit theft but acknowledges planting the bracelet. She denies knowing the chipped mug was sentimental and says she only meant to cause, quote, a dramatic moment. Nora's stomach twisted. A dramatic moment, as if she were producing a performance. The officer added. She also stated she picked up Miss Denton's ID by mistake. Camille's jaw tightened. And the access card attached to it? She claimed she did not realize it was there. Nora spoke gently but firmly. But the footage shows her removing it from my tote bag. The officer nodded. Yes, it does. Which brings me to the larger matter. He took a breath. Because Miss Halston knowingly removed a corporate access card with restricted clearance from a patron's coat, and because she attempted to plant items to create incriminating situations involving both Mrs. Pierce and Miss Denton, this qualifies as potential evidence tampering, attempted coercion, and possession of restricted corporate property. Marlene gasped sharply. Jared closed his eyes. Nora simply felt cold. The officer continued, voice steady. However, Miss Denton has currently declined to press felony charges regarding the access card. All eyes swung to Camille. She held the officer's gaze. Yes, I've declined for now. I want clarity first. And I want space for Jared and his mother to decide how they want to proceed about the personal matters. The officer nodded respectfully. Because of that decision, the primary charge at the moment will be misdemeanor theft of property under $1,000, For the bracelet. Marlene exhaled shakily, relief and devastation colliding. But the officer wasn't finished. Additionally, because Miss Halston attempted to plant incriminating items on another person, she will receive a formal citation for public disturbance via malicious intent. She may face further consequences depending on corporate policies related to the access card. Jared swallowed. So she isn't going to jail tonight? No, the officer said gently. She is cooperating. She'll be given a court date. She must return for a formal hearing. Nora caught the barest flicker of relief in Jared's eyes. Relief not for Brittney's escape from consequences, but for the hope that this wouldn't spiral into a criminal record that might ruin her future entirely. The officer continued, "We've escorted her outside so she can call a ride. She asked us not to have the family see her leave." Jared's throat tightened. Nora squeezed his arm. The second officer stepped forward. "We'll need written statements from all of you before we leave. But before that," he looked at Camille. "Miss Denton, you said you had an additional matter to disclose to the family." Camille inhaled, long and shaky. "Yes," she said softly. "I do." She turned to Jared and Nora first. "Your father meant more to me than you know," she began. "Not in a romantic way. Not in any inappropriate sense. He was my mentor. My friend. Someone who believed in me when I was a young intern who didn't know what she wanted." Her voice wavered slightly, but she pushed through. "He confided in me sometimes. About work. About the company. About aging. About regrets. And about family." Marlene stiffened. "What did he say about family?" Camille approached her slowly, as if afraid to worsen the fracture already spiderwebbed across the evening. "He loved you," she said with quiet conviction. "He loved all of you. But he was worried." Marlene's chin trembled. "About what?" Camille hesitated. "About repeating patterns from his own childhood. Favoritism, resentment between siblings, conflict over inheritance. He felt guilt over not having more emotional presence with Brittney when she was younger. He worried that she was growing into someone who equated love with being the center of attention." Marlene bit her lip hard to keep it from trembling. We tried so hard." "I know," Camille said softly. "And so did he." She turned to Jared then. "And he worried about leaving you burdened with the fallout of those dynamics." Jared exhaled shakily. "He never said that to me." "He didn't want to place that weight on you," Camille replied. "Instead, he wrote it." Jared froze. The letter. The one sealed with the emergency account. The one Brittney had wanted to destroy. Camille reached into her purse and withdrew a small photocopy. Faded, folded, clearly aged. Nora's breath caught. You have a copy?" Camille nodded. "I wasn't supposed to keep it. HR keeps originals. But your father asked me to read it once before filing, to make sure it said what he meant it to. He made me promise not to distribute it," her voice softened. "But also made me promise that if something serious ever happened, and his words were at risk of being buried, I was allowed to share this copy." Jared stepped forward, slow, almost reverent. What does it say?" Camille opened the folded paper. Her voice lowered. "It says," she began, "to my son, Jared. If you are reading this, it means I didn't get to finish what I wanted to say in person. I hope your life is filled with gentleness, with a partner who brings you balance, and with a home built on quiet strength instead of loud demands." Nora's breath hitched. Jared reached for her hand. Camille continued, "Your sister is not your responsibility. She is not your dependent, nor your burden, nor your lifelong assignment. Love her, yes, but do not let her unhappiness dictate your own." Marlene let out a soft cry. Camille paused, visibly struggling. Then, "I removed her from one account because she demanded more than I could give and blamed others when she didn't get it. I leave you what I can because I trust you will choose generosity, not entitlement. Use it wisely." The words hung in the air, heavier than anything that had been said all night. Jared stared at the floor, shoulders trembling. "He knew," he whispered. "He knew this would happen someday." Nora stepped closer, easing her arm around his waist. He leaned into her quietly, gratefully. Camille folded the paper gently. He loved her too, but he wanted her to grow. and he feared giving her more would feed the wrong parts of her. Marlene whispered, barely audible. Maybe he was right. Camille placed the photocopy on the desk. The original letter is still sealed in HR custody. This isn't meant to replace it. But I thought, after tonight, you had a right to hear his words. The taller officer stepped forward respectfully. Mr. Pierce, Mrs. Pierce, Miss Denton, we'll give you a few minutes before we return for your statements. Then both officers slipped outside, closing the door softly. The room felt impossibly still. Jared pressed the heels of his hands to his eyes, overwhelmed by grief, clarity, and betrayal woven together. I could have forgiven the humiliation, he said hoarsely. But trying to destroy Dad's letter? Trying to erase his words? I don't understand how she became this person. Marlene placed a trembling hand on his back. She felt unseen, overlooked. She twisted that pain into something sharp. And tonight, she wanted someone else to bleed, so she didn't have to feel it. Nora whispered. She didn't want to be the villain, but she created one. Camille added softly. Your father wrote that letter because he believed truth eventually rises, even if it takes years. The room absorbed the silence once more. Long, quiet, heavy. Then Jared lifted his head. His voice was steady. We give the officers our full statements. We don't shield her. We don't lie. We don't soften it. He swallowed. But we don't punish her beyond what the law requires. Dad wouldn't have wanted revenge. Nora met his gaze. He'd have wanted accountability. Jared nodded. Yes, exactly that. Marlene breathed out slowly. Then let's tell the truth. Because the storm had broken. The worst had been revealed. And the next steps would determine whether this family healed, or carried scars that could never fade. The restaurant had emptied out considerably by the time statements were finished. Servers wiped down tables. Chairs were turned upside down on polished wood. Copperbrook Grill had grown still. The evening's chaos condensed now into paperwork, memory, and the sting that comes with unwanted clarity. Nora stepped out into the night with Jared's hand clasped in hers. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain that hadn't yet arrived. Marlene followed, wrapped in a shawl someone had loaned her. Camille lingered with the officers near the entrance, finishing last administrative details. And then, under the golden pool cast by a street lamp, stood Brittney. She hugged herself tightly, her thin blouse no match for the night cold. Her hair, previously immaculate, was slightly frizzed at the ends, as if the weight of the evening had pulled threads loose. Tear streaks carved pale lines down her cheeks. When she saw them, she straightened. Not with pride, with dread. The officers gave the family space, stepping back but keeping a respectful watch. Jared took a breath. Britt. She winced as if the single syllable stung. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I can't take any of it back. But I don't know what I was thinking. But Nora saw it. The familiar tilt of Brittney's chin, the old reflex to defend herself. She wasn't lying, not entirely. But she wasn't being fully honest either. She wanted forgiveness without fully facing the truth. Jared didn't approach immediately. He kept a few steps between them, an invisible boundary he had never placed before tonight. You tried to ruin Nora, he said quietly, and Camille. And you tried to manipulate evidence again, to get something you weren't entitled to. Brittney's breath hitched. I wasn't going to take anything. I just wanted to see what he wrote, Dad's letter. I wanted to know why he didn't choose me. Marlene stepped forward, voice raw. Your father didn't reject you, Brittney. He wanted you to grow. You twisted that into something poisonous. Brittney shook her head desperately. No, Mom, I thought the letter was lies. I thought Camille made it up. I thought Nora, her voice cracked. I thought everyone was trying to make me feel small. Nora spoke softly, taking a step forward. Brittney, no one worked together against you. This came from you. Your fear. Your resentment. But those are feelings, not fate. You chose what you did tonight. The officers remained silent but alert. Brittney's shoulders slumped. So that's it? You're all done with me. Jared inhaled. No. But things won't be the same. Her eyes filled again. I don't want to lose my family. You're not losing us, Marlene said, voice trembling. But you are losing the illusion that will rescue you from your choices. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was honest. And it was the first truth Brittney had been given without padding in years. The officers approached gently. Miss Halston, we've arranged a rideshare for you. They'll arrive in 2 minutes. Brittney nodded weakly. She turned back toward the family one last time. Nora. Her lower lip trembled. I really am sorry. Nora met her gaze steadily. I hope you do the work to mean it. Not a curse. Not a dismissal. A boundary. Brittney stepped back as the rideshare's headlights swept across the parking lot. She climbed inside without another word. The door shut. The car pulled away. And the night exhaled. The keepsake box. Back home, after the heaviness of the evening had dulled into exhaustion, Jared set Nora's wooden keepsake box on their kitchen counter. He touched the engraved brass key embedded on top. This is beautiful, he murmured. Nora smiled softly. Open it. He lifted the lid and froze. Inside lay a folded slip of paper Nora didn't recognize. Worn at the edges. Thin. Old. What's this? Jared whispered. Nora shook her head. I didn't put anything inside yet. With cautious fingers Jared unfolded it. And both their breaths caught. It was a faded ticket stub. A small, nearly forgotten relic from years ago. A concert they had attended early in their relationship. Jared had lost the stub the same night. He'd been so disappointed, calling it the first memory I wanted to keep forever. The stub was right here. But how? Nora traced the paper gently. Your father found this. Years ago. I remember him showing it to me and saying, he'll want this when he's older. I kept it safe. I thought your birthday would be the right time to return it. I planned to give it to you quietly, maybe after the cake. Jared's eyes grew glassy. Dad saved this. Nora nodded. He saved more than you knew. Jared sank into a kitchen chair, ticket stub in hand, letting the memory of his father settle over him. It's like he left us messages everywhere. Nora rested her hand over his. He did. Jared exhaled, long and shaky. Nora, thank you. For tonight. For staying calm. For being you. She leaned down, kissed his forehead. We're okay. We'll be okay. He pulled her close. I'm sorry you were dragged into all of this because of my sister. Nora shook her head. This wasn't because of you. Or even because of me. It was Brittney's battle with herself. He nodded, slow but understanding. And that, Nora added gently, is something she'll have to face without dragging others down. Outside, the night deepened, quiet, steady, no longer holding its breath. Inside, Jared slipped the ticket stub into the keepsake box and closed the lid softly. A small, delicate symbol of something their night had nearly lost. Truth doesn't need spectacle. It only needs a place to be seen.